The Guide to Madness, Volume 1, The Bonds of Love. I pushed too hard, and zeal slipped through my fingers as I was plunged into the pits and oceans of self-destruction. Days passed, and I grew empty without her, her being a lost relic thrown into despair and regret. Months passed like cars on the road to salvation, yet I was not among them. Happiness, joy, and bliss eluded my reach as I extended my hand to those passing cars. I extended my thumb of hope, trying to catch a ride into the night. Away and far would become my fears and delusions. If only light would reach down and grace me away. Stay with the beast in me and perished with the evil become. Now among the cars are faces, and on them is pain. It's all reflections of past horrors, my horrors. And as a tear of despair rolls down the cheek of hope and slowly escapes, I feel myself fall with that tear and slip away. Frozen and melted, there's thawed emotion left on the bench, and it now smells. It's old, and all that's left to do is throw it away with the rest. I bit into that thawed emotion. I bit into that poison and let it corrupt my heart. It blackened my thoughts and clouded my mind. I threw myself under the bus at every stop until there was nothing left. I broke into sweat and perspired oceans of regret, for I had broken the bonds of love. My boundaries were set as low as the respect I had for myself, and my self-control faded into the lonely lands of latent restraint, yet I wasn't there. I was in the fields of fire alight. We need to care and love. We need these vessels clean and full of hope and full of joy. Instead of external torture and abuse, I wrought down wrath and ruin upon my inner city. I tore down my banners of promises. I hurled my chests of repair and content over the valley cliffs, and as they broke into a million shards, I saw myself broken and scattered. There was too much to pick up. I was unable to be put back together, and although it hurt, I accepted it and decided to sit in my pool of woe and shower myself in pity. That did not last, for keys to locks were waiting, fetters were to be shattered, and my inner joy and goodness, in which we all possess, was about to be projected into my newly crafted reality, my freshly inspired nest of growth and imaginative progress. Poor and empty was not on my cards. I had now taken control, and I wanted to fly and really saw. Above the past and beyond, there was one definitive conclusion. Change is swift and ready, but the road to madness is a long one. Like the sun never setting on an endless horizon, I too grew weary of shedding light on an undying shadow. Dusk till dawn was a battle. The uphill war and struggle to subdue madness was taking it out of me, for whatever bitterness I still held was poison consuming my vitals, chewing me up and spitting me out. An eternal pond of delusion. For what reason did I hold such madness behind my heart? True, it changed me and dropped me into the wolf den where I fought tooth and nail to stay afloat in that ocean of fur reeking of regret, for I had changed. Those wolves altered me, and I became something lost and free. My mind ran, and it ran until every ounce of my power was faded. My mouth governed my world. My mind took the back seat as it and my heart were held prisoner to the rage and anger that I now harbored. I was empty-hearted and light-headed, 10 fathoms deep in the crushing black, and on the road to hell. Volume 2, Atlantis Sinking. It was raining again, and with the rain came the rising of rivers, dams, and oceans, all within the realms of my mind. Waterfalls, drowned streams downstream, and all life around was touched. No emotion was kept at bay. But not from my eyes was there a rain, no. It was an internal flood of my senses. Grottos hollows and caverns in which remained untouched for years were now filling and flooding. And with no runoffs and no escapes, it finally broke the walls. The banks swelled and the dams bursted. The oceans roared as my inner senses declared my stability to be a disaster state, inundated with excess flooding from the sea of woe and anger. My Atlantis was sinking, and I was plummeting downwards into the deep dark of no man's land. No return would avail. The glass shattered and my swollen knuckles ached as I watched my world around me evolve. I watched it flood for so long. I was perishing, and I was taking Atlantis down with me. I was consumed by rage, a selfish, self-deluded delusion created in the dense perimeters of my inner prisons. An oxygen farm deep under the surface was all that was keeping me drawing breath. But my Atlantis couldn't bear even the slightest pain. And while my delusions ran, I took pity in my sanctuary garden. Under the falling white petals of a rose tree, I was laden with regret. And only the surfacing of Atlantis would break that spell. So I began to burn the woodland down. And as embers rose and ashes fell, I danced, knowing I had realized the true cost of regret and abuse, and was willing to die righting my wrongs. Volume 3, Atlantis Rising. It was not with words that Atlantis drew fresh air back into her lungs again, but with actions. Words were mere meanings to ends, whereas actions were beginnings, fresh chapters just waiting to be read. I floated lifelessly to the bottom of the sea, and as I hit the ocean floor, I lifted Atlantis up, and as she rose into the pale light above, I could tell she was content. It was all she ever wanted. It was all she ever needed. The color returned to her cheeks, and her blazing autumn trees bloomed with crisp, brown, serrated-edged leaves, and they smelled beautiful. Life had returned to Atlantis. All flourished around, and even the wind was clear and joyous, and sang of beginnings and renewed faith. The sun smiled and the moon cried as Atlantis and I finally found happiness, after a lifetime of searching for it. Clouds broke and the seas tamed its waves as glistening glitter danced atop the surface, for I had tasted disaster. For I had crept under the sheets of regret, and I laid there for far too long. Atlantis was free and beautiful again, and I loved her. And from then, I held up the sun every day for her. Every night I would pull the moon across the sky just to shed even the slightest amount of light onto her glooming and radiant face. My heart was now host to the most beautiful light I had ever touched. Though I must be truthful, I am beyond selfish. My wants and needs far outweigh my logical and rational counterweights. Pushed aside was my compassion, and it was far too gone for me to pull back. I had drifted into space, only back alley mist and city sewer lid steam was upon me. I was uncomfortable and swelling with anger. A jealous parasite had now made me home to its fits of hunger, hungering for proof of insecurities that I was envisioning, not knowing if I needed the answers or simply wanted them. Either way, I was terrified of knowing. So I swam. Through the gutters and drains, I drifted from north to south. A compass swaying in the wind was good enough for me now. I was lost with little to no direction or location of my way out. My inner cages and acres of steel-strung holding pens, the hectares of barbed-wired fences linking a chain of security around my courtyard of confinement. Again, I was stuck, sinking and drowning, but this time, it didn't feel so bad. I guess now even pain was worn away, and even heartache was too scared to ask permission to settle within me. Volume 4, Wax and Soul. So I was now basically a lump of wax on the floor, melting and hardening, changing shape to fit the atmosphere around me. It's selfish, I know, but it's all I knew. Things would heat up, I would melt, she would cry, I would slide around making no sense at all. She would drown in tears, I would harden, pull her up, shape emotion back into its right shape again, and then when it was all over, I would turn up the heat again. But why? Now days were looked at as wars, months as genocides, and years as, well, hell. The parasite was almost upon me entirely. Heaven was too afraid. I asked the devil for assistance, but I guess he was out of town. I was out of luck. I had used every fiber of fuel I could. Replenishment was on the menu, and I was starving for it. After burning all of my rage, I was unable to find any further help. I had exhausted my resources. My mines were bare, the forests were all cut. There was no more rage in me to be found. And so I thought. I was free from that internal entity ablaze with self-righteousness and destruction. So once again, I had assumed my usual position as Mr. Wumplax III, hailing from the green hills of Pityton, just off the Burnington Bridge of Rage, east of the Hatron Valley. Just a few hours' drive, and I was flying. My head-first dive into madness, colors and streetlights flickered as I spent all the glitter I could. Glitter being wasteful and careless love. Lust was disappointing and hope tasted of cherry-flavored flowers, wilted and broken, just stalks and autumn deluge. I was a fire in the heart of the sea, and my light was mirrored into 1,000 roaring engines, deafening silence in the battle bars. A made-up band that plays at Jerry Welnelly's bar every Tuesday night from 6 till 9. 3 hours of soul that never existed and never will. I had set. My wax abode, in which hosted a many fine party, was now empty. And there was no heat for me to melt in, no fire hot enough to set me ablaze and liquefy me. I had lost the light, she was gone, and so too was love. The wind burnt me, and so my exterior hardened, and I was encased in guilt. And the soul rift was waiting for me. Volume 5, The Index of Madness. When it all came down, when it opened, my life became dull and my world changed. Guilt-ridden and empty, was it now that I had plunged into the deep and had truly tasted guilt and shame and true pain that I may be able to stay afloat? Could I hope to swim and no longer fear that I would drown? I had made a new life and was at home to the comforts of sloth. The drinking of alcohol and coffee was often, perhaps too often. Ballads and folklore were told and sung, fantasy and fiction read and became my closest friends, true friends. Strange how deprivation of love and of company can alter you, truly alter you. A collection of memories on repeat fluttered endlessly in my mind. Sleep was eluding my grasp, and all in all, I was convinced I was consumed by some strain of madness. Joy was seldom in my heart. There was a drum beating there, beating and beating, though I felt it was without purpose, a simple waste of energy. I wanted life, I wanted wings, and I wanted feathers. I wanted to fly. The index of madness is this: a collection of memories, wasteful and meaningless to hold on to, yet you do, and it slowly decays your rational thought and logic, and then havoc. Ruined hearts fall from the trees, and ghosts walk from the fireplaces and taunt the living, carrying their dead. Who knew the dead could die? Havoc. Broken hearts leap from chests, and the heartache seeps from their eyes. It's evident to everyone, hiding their dread. Who knew the broken could keep breaking? Havoc. Corrupted minds run from madness, but become overtaken and fall victim to the rage within them. Carrying their heads in their hands, mostly, who knew the deluded were so full of hate? Broken. Oft-torn hearts, it's art and it's painful. The broken wander their new nightmares, free and willingly. Broken. Necessary dances of woe. It's hard and it's shameful. The dances ranged from peaceful, dreamlike movements to graphic performances of abuse. Broken. Puzzle pieces. It's bizarre and it's playful. The missing are scattered like hearts MIA, free and running to nowhere. Broken. Brittle bones break, it's art and it's useless. The breaking search for relief in their newly found agony. Broken and weak with every weak, weakening weekly ruin. The dilapidated old town of Love Market stands still. Time was frozen, but pain continued to spread. Abandoned love. Loved. Ruin. The old town of hope. Buildings are torn down. Time ate memory quite quickly here. Hope wasted on painting the walls with sanity. Ruin. And rust. Copper pipes ridden with dust and waste. The pipes in your heart. Pain perished purity quite slowly. Hate wasted on cleaning the pipes of love. Ruin. The music of fate. Old town busking parlors and silverfish quartets. The music connected to pain. Using creation to flush away memory and begin anew. Empty. In the desert oceans with no fuel, hunger and thirst for love consumes your heart, and the vultures are disgusted and they won't even pick you clean. Empty. Fumes fill your chest as no usable catalyst for fuel is found. Running on empty and sleeping on stains, you are spent. Empty. A hole where an organ once was. Diamond skies are signs of lies too good to be true. A hole where her heart once was. Empty. Holes and graves. Coal and names, charcoal scribbles of meaningful existence. Empty-hearted and light-headed. Lead and foil. Empty. Empty. Volume 6. The Wardens Warnings. It was prison inside, and all the inmates were rabid. I contained them all in my own way, inside multi-level car parks deep within the concrete metropolises of my inner capitals. Each one of them resembled me and was me in their own way. A feast of personality exchanges and variations of diluted-like beverages were a constant. The daily wake and break, and then straight into the primordial feast of personality disorders. Now each prisoner was locked away, cell-ridden and impatient. Bars of steel ran through the roof and captured them. I believe it got their best side. Water was sparse yet relevant. Each prisoner had his or her own face and a story. They were my stories and my memories locking me away. Now, the warden was a symbol of dominance, but he was real, very real and very angry. Life had bitten him too hard and too many times. He was sour and of brick, like a titan of rock and steel. He would speak to me humbly, questioning my sanity and tempting me to cause harm to my fellow inmates and guards. It was queer, his humor, and seldom was he colorful. Gray was the whole prison, though. Always. The warden once told me his name. He had been to visit me every day. Kindly he would ask, and never would he break character. His visits were expected now. They were that frequent. In his stern, high-pitched, yelling voice he spoke, he told me his name, Derry Vinto, Jolly Lily Baster, Harp Talento. If my memory is serving me right, I believe that is the name he gave me. Or was it Very Dinto, Bally Lily Tar Palento? Or maybe Terry Hinto, Bally Lily Yarb Valento? I don't know. Either way, he was definitely from around there. Tall stock and of noble breed, no doubt his temper dictated this. One day on one of his visits, he told me that I must remain careful and vigilant, and that one day he would eventually come to break me, to tear my life apart and pull my skin through the bars. I knew he was serious, for I had that same anger within me, and the way I saw it, I may as well fall while fighting and slowly wane away behind these bars. So, he was not happy. He warned me day after day, and I laughed, taking advantage of the steel captors that held me in safety. He warned me, and he warned me, and I did not listen. Back then, I was still so full of rage and aggression. I had so much to spend. I wanted to fight and kick his head through his smile. Oh, I was faded and fading. I was a shadowing light, and I was losing myself. And he continued to warn me of the impending pain, the incoming storm. Lies were holding me together, along with open heartstring orchestras and the thoughts of smoking, like a gun. My sunsets were exiled, and I too was banished. The Wardens Warnings were coming to an end. The march of the Warden was upon us, and, well, these were dark days. Dark days indeed. Volume 7, The Cataclysm Event. The Warden's Warnings had stayed for now. There was no pulling my skin through the bars anymore. In fact, I was in the free and clear. For now it seemed I had grown wings. My rose-red desire for burning passion still lingered like a dying horse in the desert of loneliness. I stopped counting days and started counting weeks. My perception of the Warden was dull and tarnished, out of sight. He was gone like the sinking of Atlantis, quick but momentous. I could always feel his eyes still on me. I felt a cataclysm was waiting in the wings. It felt like the quiet before the storm, the eve before the fall. I was sure the soul rift was about to open, and her and I would be torn apart like two star-flung lovers deep in the corners of the cosmos. It would be an expansion of self and an explosion all at once. She was so beautiful and made up of so much, and I was her poison, toxic and dull. Cruelty and beauty could not remain together, for they hurt each other. Cruelty was selfish, and beauty was highly strung. Cruelty broke the beauty, and she swayed away into the arms of heartache. Lint and vine wrapped around my mind tightly, and I was choking. The soul rift was expanding and shrinking, heating and cooling, on fire with ice. I feel the warnings of the Warden were false, and they were just a test of my inner mantle. Either way, pain was on the shore, and I was sure we were leaving it behind. The event was not yet upon us, and to be truthful, I did not wish for it. I wished for happiness. Among the ranks of hurt and upset, things were coming to an end, and it was the end of the year, but it didn't feel like it. I didn't feel content knowing I had wasted another year. She was upon me, and so too my control. I had become quite skillful with my ear and tongue. My listening ear, my shoulder to cry on, I'm listening. And my silver tongue, my rudder steering me through the peaceful waters, then sometimes through maelstroms of nature's fury. The rift was uncertain. Prevention was now a key more precious than the door it opened. We were done falling like stones in an endless spiral of descent in a bottomless lake, down and down into the black, crushing unknown. Ascending was our play, and hopeful was in the spirit. Atlantis and I would meet again, be it in the rift or in my heart, it was certain that we would. I could not forsake my own heart, nor could I cast my emotions aside and live blindly in deluded fantasies and dreams. The time had come. Would the maelstrom of heartache open and slowly swallow us in? Or would the rift expand and tear our two hearts apart? I did not want it. I wanted Atlantis to be loved, and loved by me. Volume 8, Scented Scribbles and Night Flights. I hit the road with desire and passion, pushing heart and soul into the woodland nights that were my headaches. The engines ran hot and the moon froze cold, a night of explosions in the sky and fire in the hills. Scented memories guided me in as I touched down, a pilot of mass hysteria of self. Clouds were thick yet thin, and there was a blooming light over my head, a halo of deprivation and neglect. The road swayed east to west, and I with it. The line markings grew faint and taunted me with newer, fresher paint. Scented scribbles were drawn over the highway, desert of no self, mirages and reflections too deep to touch, distant, cold, and ugly. Tar runways and oiled wheels were a common misconception created by the desire to taste coin, a lust too weak to trust. Scented scribble notes left like breadcrumbs lingering in the wind for a keen nose to notice, a nose of poise and structure. Rivers like veins ran through my inner valleys. I used them to take more land for myself and for others. My night flights into the bright white lights high above the heights were lonely. I was drunk on happiness and berry and mint. Red and green, sweet and bitter was the coal in the furnaces. The steam flowed from the engines as rivers flood in the storms. My heart bending to the sound of inaudible noises. Kisses and handshakes spread me thin. Perfume and stoves were too common. What remained of the glass was not empty nor full, but suspended in a motionless status. Lazy were my night flights, a new journey every night into the wilds of no man's land and the withering tundra. I wandered aimlessly towards no self. No ocean was too big, no mountain too high, and no heart was too broken. A shivering, quivering quilt of guilt arrows pierced my chest, and I cried out, for the Lord of war and of love was dead. I was dead. The horizon swayed and hardly stayed straight. My love for vice was not right. I couldn't see the sun setting without two of them shaking and shuddering. My road and my madness was alike a beehive, stirred and shaken. My woodland night flights into the black sky, engines of madness, the Charlie Harper's band and the Scooby Cats, a four-piece soul band. Where was my mind? Out there in the vast wilderland. Was it night flying or creating scented scribbles? Was I losing my mind, truly? Truly? Volume 9, The Peculiar Taste of Heart. Her mind was like a runaway train, full of energy to burn and steam to let off, the turning wheels of endless passion. I knew the taste of emptiness and the inescapable sounds of love, though I had not heard them nor tasted them for too long. The silence and absence of hopelessness was seldom achieved, yet I pushed for it. I needed the clock to reset. The hangman's tale of betrayal and lust was ever clearer with each passing day, and I hated myself for noticing it. A little part of me would wane away from the idea, also spineless and without pride. A heart taste of pain. It's a story of all the mistakes made and a reminder to never make those mistakes again. Red and flowing as wine from caskets, the blood is rich and of cherry scent. She tasted wild, like a burning field of roses and vanilla, distinct and alive. The kind of smell that drives a man crazy without the presence of touch, unbearable to the heart and torturous to the mind. Her heart tasted of pain, the story of all the betrayal and heartache she had endured. I was sensitive yet too selfish to know what to do. Rose red and sky blue, our dreams felt fit for kings and aspirations are like paradise, all for two. Now June housed new meaning. Winter was forever white and filled with snowflake love hearts, some broken and some intact. The taste of June was forever sweet and every month after, bitter. Shipwrecked lovers struggled to survive among the pounding waves of abuse. She was first to fall, so I held her heart until it was no longer beating, a memory I will always want to replace. Shipwrecked hope poured on the bitter shoals. Wind and dream alike, I could still taste and smell her. It was always stronger than my madness. Part of me was always anchored to her rationality, grounded to her wisdom. She tasted of beauty and vanilla, all right. There was blood in the water and oil in the sand, enraged and coursing like a blizzard in the desert, so rare and beautiful. A desert flower that only grows in subclimate temperatures, so bizarre and free. Yeah, she was a volcano on the sea floor, making islands for fun, eating earth and drinking wind, plum embers and strawberry feathers. She was more rare than anything. No golden basilisk nor shadowed spirit could compare to her. She was rare indeed, and more so was her taste and smell. That memory I could never forget, even if I wished it so. Though she abandoned us in the pits of solitude and misplaced heartache, she left me at the altar of denial, and I ran away with my happiness. Sometimes rare is magic. It's precious and shadowing, but rare may also defeat, beat you down and run you over and over. I'd lost the light, and love vanished like stars at sunrise. She was broken and beautiful, and I was ugly and sobbing. And at the end of our road, it was not pleasant. It was a spiral into all of my fears, a ribbon tightly wrapped around my neck. I could never forget how rare she was, but something was always pulling me away from her. Why did I deny such love? And for what should I now taste? Regret? Volume 10, Winter Love and Making Summer. The second day of 2017 marked a day of physical romance and two minds bonding, two lovers binding. The heat was overwhelming as our two souls were dropped into the acts of ecstasy and climax. Sweat poured and moans were swept into memory, our two bodies meeting again. Our lust and desire was the scent strongest in the air. And she was mine again in flesh and soul, though I could not sway my fear that we had entered the rift. Our souls were as one again, though, but it was altered and forced. Something had changed. Don't get me wrong, our kicks were the light to my soul. It was summer sex, love making pain disappear, and love changing the patterns, the ebb and flow, two torn hearts working as one, just in the moments of passion, closure, brief. Was it right? No. But we needed each other, and it was a meeting of lava and sea. Her pain doused my anger, and I was left cold and hardened. We were still so spent and floating on air. A light-weighted bearing on our newly constructed reality was clear for us two. We were to shift apart, drift and sway until we had produced some kind of meaningful change. It was as she wanted, but not as strong. My mind was with her as well as my heart. We had joined again in passion and lust. For that moment, we were back. The rift had opened and swallowed my passion. My joy and emptiness were flickering like streetlights down a misty back alley setting, click after click, realization after realization. Back alley waves of truth. Now moments of passion and lust were brief, a train passing through, a train of relief and peace, a break from the hell. But it passed, and it was gone, and so too what remained of our hearts twisted and bent. What was left was swirling heartache drifting through the courses of our soul rift. The cataclysm awoke a sleeping giant in me, one I thought I had suppressed. Reclining hopes and setting suns washed over me as I put my heart and soul into recovery. I acted a lie and painted faces with joy and seldom upset. The rift had indeed pulled our two hearts apart and drained them of all love, just husks and shells of what was once beautiful. Our love was a story, our sex was a mosaic and a tapestry of our inner emotions, and all the pain would slowly wash away. With our hearts torn, our muscles sore, our words empty, our actions meaningless, our eyes crying, our hands aching, our minds running, and of course our love loveless. Would we survive and write new chapters and tales just apart from one another, two separate stories with a common outcome, writing apart and forging new dead-end narratives all directed at the other soul, a war against love lost and a battle for love ahead? What crime. What a crime it was to forsake that lust. Memore morte.